Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping.
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
And you're watching.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Combat Sports UK MMA podcast. I'm here joined once more by Taylor Collard. Taylor, you weren't meant to be here, mate, but one of us has cried off sick. It was meant to be myself and Alex here today, but Alex has got the dreaded coronavirus by the looks of it. So, you know, that deadly virus that ruined all our life for a couple of years is back to take out one half of the Combat Sports UK co-host.
I know, it's hit us. It's hit us. Yeah. I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. Happy to review some fights with you and chat through the ridiculous amount of fight news that we had come out over the last week, really, since we recorded our last podcast. Obviously, best wishes to Alex. Hope he coughs himself back healthy again and he's back next week to jump on.
Yeah, as long as he's back next week, because I'm carrying it on both shoulders up here. That's, you know, week in, week out, boxing, MMA. I could do with the rest, Alex. So come on, mate, sort yourself out. No, we're get better, mate, and you'll be back on before we know it. So I suppose we'll jump straight into it, mate. The fights this weekend, hugely, highly anticipated main event, and all went to shit, really. So, you know, from your side of it, what was your views on the fight, the expectations for the fight, and then obviously the reality of what happened?
Yeah, I mean, as we kind of alluded to on the podcast last week, it's like it was such a highly built up fight, and who's going to come out on top? How are they going to come out on top? What's the future look like for the one that does? And the two kind of parallel storylines that we had with Gamrot losing to Dariush the last time out, and then picking up his win over Jalen Turner, right? Jalen Turner?
Yep.
Yes, I got it this time. And then Fiziev obviously coming off the Gaethje defeat, which was a really good fight as well. So for these two, this was a big fight. And I think for it to go the way it was, hey, I mean, every fight fan in the world is disappointed, especially after that first round. I mean, my God, the hands on Fiziev were fun. But you could see the game plan's coming out a little bit and starting to get a bit chessy. I just got, and I think I always think with stuff like that, after Tom Aspinall spoke so honestly about his injury and how it had been something that his knee had been bothering for a while. You know, I do, you know, obviously apart from the Anderson Silvers, Chris Weidmans and McGregor's, maybe McGregor's not so much. I think there's always something with an MCL, ACL. But is there a bit of overtraining in there? Is this something that's kind of been on the pipeline type thing? And with someone like Fiziev, with the amount of kicking he must do in training camp, I think it's a matter of time before something like this happens. But yeah, incredible first round that we got. And then just a disappointment, man. What about you? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that then, just about the injuries and whatnot, because I was listening to the Believe You Me podcast this morning with Michael Bisping and Anthony Smith, and they were talking with Jamal Hill. And Jamal was saying, you know, regarding his tendon tear or whatever it was, his Achilles, he'd injured it, but he was saying that it was already deteriorating. And when he'd spoken to doctors, they'd said it was something that was going to go eventually regardless. And he had absolutely no idea, felt absolutely fine, was walking around fine, you know, playing sports, obviously fighting. He was just, you know, completely unaware. And then obviously once it went, they basically said, well, this was shot to shit anyway. It was going to go could have gone at any moment. So, you know, it's almost fortunate it happened on a basketball court for him and not in the octagon itself. But I mean, the fight itself, mate, I was really looking forward to it. Two very interesting styles, and I thought it was going to make for a real good clash. Obviously, we had the Sarukian and Gamrot fight. I mean, that was one of the greatest fights I have watched, skill for skill. You know, they were so competitive in there, and obviously Gamrot came out on top. I actually thought the first round, Fiziev probably nicked it. He looked sharp, he looked fast, he looked razor focused, but Gamrot surprised me. It was interesting because Fiziev was stuffing the takedown attempts, but Gamrot was landing big shots on the feet as well, and it was quite funny really to see them both lean into each other's skill set, almost as if to say, I can live with you wherever this goes. And, you know, coming towards the end of that first round, it was really hotting up. But I'll be honest, mate, I'm a bit fed up with the Apex cards. Not for the cards themselves, just I don't like it in the Apex. You know, you've got Fiziev and you've got Gamrot, two of the best guys in one of the, you know, the hottest divisions in the UFC. and they're fighting in an arena in front of just a handful of people. It's just ridiculous. But for this event, I was happy to see it, that it was in the Apex, because if there was an arena full of people there and that would have happened, it's a bit like the Aspinall one, the main event there. That's what you're buying the tickets to see. And you turn up, you've got Fiziev, Gamrot, and you're absolutely buzzing for the fight, and then that happens, you're absolutely devastated. You feel like you've been robbed of your hard-earned money, because these UFC tickets aren't cheap, are they? So, yeah, I suppose it being in the Apex was, probably a blessing in disguise for that one.
Was a bonus. Yeah, that first round, I thought one thing that kind of took me back in my seat was when he went for the single leg and he kind of picked up Fiziev's leg and just hopped around the octagon with him for about 4 or 5 steps. I'm thinking, whoa, the balance on Rafael Fiziev. I mean, that's serious. I mean, when you're looking at Gamrot's one of the best wrestlers in the top 10. You know, obviously you've got Makhachev, right, who's the champ, but you look outside of that, Gamrot's up there. And if Gamrot's struggling to take Fiziev down, you're really thinking, oh, okay, what would Fiziev be able to do against somebody like a Makhachev further up the division? You know, Poirier or Gaethje's not going to take him down. We've seen how the Gaethje one ends out. So I thought it was a really good first round. And when he put that combination, I think it was a 3 or 4 punch combination that he put together, couple to the body and then up with a couple
razor
of
fast.
My goodness, that was something. And like you said, Gamrot as well was really, really putting it together as well. I was super impressed with him. Really, really impressed with him.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for me, it was a case of the fight took place on the feet. And if you were going to say that, you would have heavily leant towards Fiziev. And it was actually much closer than what I expected. But I think the game plan with Gamrot was probably to show that he could deliver on the feet as well. Yeah. And then, you know, do that, maybe coming into that second round, take the level change, take it down, look for the takedowns, look to impose some grappling there. But yeah, it's just a shame that main event fell off. But obviously, we move on. Gamrot's had his hand raised, like it or not, for the way it's happened. But Fiziev, we're looking at probably the best part of a year out now, which is a real shame for him. I think it was an ACL tear, wasn't it? So it's not a quick. But for Gamrot, he does move on. He does move on with a win, but that moves him up to number 6 in the rankings now.
Yeah.
And if you look above him, I think in order you go Michael Chandler, Beneil Dariush, who was obviously beating Gamrot previously, and then who have you got next? You've got Gaethje, Poirier.
Yeah, there we go. Got it. Yeah.
Poirier, Gaethje, Oliveira, Makhachev. They're the only names above him now. So for me, this one was always a case of whoever won got a crack at the top 5. But it's funny because you've got Islam's matched up with Charles. And okay, it's not a million miles away. So Gamrot calling out Oliveira was probably a clever shout, because if Oliveira is to lose that fight, that's probably one that they'd look to make, which is, again, a really intriguing fight. Chandler's obviously matched up with McGregor, supposedly. We'll see what happens with that. Yeah. I don't really see Poirier taking a fight with Gamrot. I think he's just interested in big names and big fights now. Gaethje's right there. He's next in line. I will not see Gaethje again unless there's something major crops up until he fights the winner with Makhachev and Oliveira. So the only person left really is Beneil Dariush. So do we see Gamrot in there with Beneil? Potentially. It's one I'm sure Gamrot would like to get it back, and it's probably a nice, if he goes in there and beats Beneil Dariush, then he's right there. So be an interesting one to see what happens.
It's getting to be a bit of a logjam, right? Like when you literally lay it out like that, and you got it spot on in terms of the top 6 above Chandler. I mean, even if you're looking down Gamrot, he's beaten Sarukian, and then Dan Hooker, Grant Dawson. They're not really that upper echelon. I mean, Grant Dawson's obviously got the main event coming up in a couple of weeks, but you're not really thinking, he deserves Gamrot, especially Gamrot coming off this win. Do you put him against? I mean, do you get the McGregor facade out of the way and just go Chandler Gamrot? I'd love to see that fight. That would be a great fight. But that seems like the only one you can do, really.
I mean, I was hesitant about the McGregor Chandler fight, but I do think it will happen at some point, prior to March. I think that's my guess. I think we will see him back, and we'll see that fight kick on. So, yeah, I mean, from a stylistic matchup, Chandler and Gamrot's phenomenal. I'd love to see that fight, but For Gamrot, I mean, you talked about fighting down the rankings. Then I can't see that being something that he would entertain. You know, he's been in there with Jalen Turner, he's been in there with Arman Saruki, and he's had those fights, and he's proven that he's above that. And whether we like it or not, his record says he's just beaten Rafael Fizievs. So whichever way we look at it, Gamrot, it's time to look at somebody in the top 4, 5, and I think the Dariush fight is probably the one. If Charles is unfortunate and comes off second best against Makhachev again, that's another fight I'd love to see. But the main entertainment, if you want to call it that, throughout the whole fight week and leading into the fight, was that crazy son of a bitch Bryce Mitchell. I mean, you've got to love the guy. You know, coming into the octagon with the Bible, talking about the ice walls on the edge of the flat earth and Satan's plans, and he's just been unbelievable all week. I mean, Bryce Mitchell's one of those you hear nothing from him, and then all of a sudden he just pops up, talks a load of crazy shit, has a fight, and then just disappears again. And it's just part of the character. I mean, I love him. I think he's brilliant. I think he's absolutely out of his goddamn mind, but I think he's absolutely superb entertainment value.
I mean, like you said, him coming into the octagon with that Bible just shouting freedom, it's like something out of a film, like, honestly. And that's why I really love the UFC. And the kid in me who watched WWE, WWF, it's like, this is amazing. Like, this is ridiculous, and I love it. Right? It's stuff like that. But he's borderline now Spike Carlisle. Did you ever remember Spike Carlisle when he was in the UFC? And he was talking the same level of stuff, should we put it that way? He's borderline getting to that now. And this whole
very political.
And if you haven't heard the segment on Bisping's podcast, this is just the whole plug for Bisping's podcast. But if you haven't heard that segment, where they literally spend 40, 50 minutes talking about all the stuff that's in Bryce Mitchell's head. They spent 5 talking about his fight. It is fantastic. It is so worth a watch. But in terms of the fight, man, it's an interesting fight. I mean, even if you throw away all of the stuff, that fight is a real interesting one. I know you got some questions about who you thought won. You put a question mark in our notes, so I'm curious to see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I've just seen a little bit across social media, and in the immediate aftermath, when I was sort of looking at it, I was seeing quite a lot of people out there saying that they thought Dan Ige won the fight. I personally didn't agree with that. I thought Bryce Mitchell won it. I thought rounds 1 and 2 were pretty close, and 1 and 2, either way you could go. I think I could see why anybody would give rounds 1 and 2 to Dan Ige. I can see that. 3 was comprehensively Bryce Mitchell. But for me, the first 2 rounds were really close. I went Mitchell. Obviously, the good judges, a couple of them at least went that way. Well, 2 went that way, and 1 gave him all 3 rounds, which was a bit of a strange one for me. But again, 1 and 2 were quite... It's funny though, isn't it? Because you see it and you go, 30-27, that's absolutely bizarre, because it was such a close fight. But the reality is, I can make an argument for Mitchell winning 1, 2, and 3. So I think when we see a close fight, we very often see 30-27 is an absolute robbery. But this is a bit of the problem with the scoring system, like we've spoken about before. And, it was a very close fight. Mitchell won the third. 1 and 2, you could kind of go either way. I went Mitchell on 1 and I went Ige on the other. And I think that was kind of a reflection of what most people saw. But again, it just shows, very, very close fight. And I was actually very impressed with Dan Ige. I thought it's quite funny because Bryce Mitchell is known for his grappling, but on the feet, I thought he was equally as good. I also think he caught a couple of heavy shots from Ige, and that's what kind of forced him to move into. I know he likes to grapple anyway, but I think he realised that I can't stand with Dan Ige and trade because I'm gonna get banged here. There was a couple of times where he took a smack in the mouth and kind of second guessed what he was doing next, and you could see that. But he made the adjustments, and to come on in the third round stronger than ever, it just, especially with that eye injury, shows the heart and character of Bryce Mitchell. Because obviously last time out he got pummeled by Ilia Topuria, so to come back against a banger in Dan Ige as well, and then to fight like that, fight through that adversity. I mean, he's definitely got God on his side. I'll give him that.
he's got something on his side. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you. I think when you talk about the scoring, it's always really important to remember that the judges' scorecards are taken from them at the end of each round, right? So they can't go back and change and things like that. And they are scoring it. Supposedly, they're supposed to be scoring it as a 1-round fight every round. So yes, you can absolutely, when you look at it and you see 30-27, you think, oh, that doesn't sound right. But yeah, you can make that argument that Bryce Mitchell won every single round. I sit on that same fence as you. I think 1 or 2 you could easily give to Ige. I think more, I want to say it was the second round where the eye injury was caused, where the doctor was called in. I think with the last, was it the last 30 seconds or was that the next fight we'll get on to? I think anyway. I think when you're going into that territory, when doctors are called in and things like that, it's the damage side of it. It's not a Nate Diaz job where it's a cut on his face and he's got a load of scar tissue, so he's going to bleed, right? It's not that situation. His eye was messed up, right? And Danny Ige done that to him. So I think that second round, you could swing more in the favor of Danny Ige in terms of the damage. And then the first was really interesting. I think Dan stuffed the takedown quite well. The first initial takedown that Mitchell went to.
That's kind of what surprised me more. It was strange because I was actually impressed with Mitchell's hands and I was impressed with Ige's grappling, defensive grappling. There was nothing offensive there, but to have Bryce Mitchell on your back for all that time and not end up in any trouble, I thought it was a complete credit to Dan Ige. Just to jump on what you were saying there.
Yeah, and I think both of them, like Ige comes out of that with a ton of credit. It's not kind of like in the article I wrote about that, and I was questioning about if he gets defeated, is that where he's going to be now? 15-10, and he's going to stay there. I think you could quite easily make an argument from that fight that Ige could get a fight, if not one below him, a couple up. Obviously, it won't be Bryce Mitchell just now, but I think you could make that argument that he deserves, because that was a tough fight and it was a war. Just looking at the rankings now, he's got Sadiq Youssef in front of him at 11, Bryce at 10. Evloev at 9.
I think Youssef's just been announced to fight Barbosa, hasn't he?
Yep. Yeah, Barbosa's at 13.
Youssef and Barbosa, as they're facing off now. I think that was announced. Another one of the announcements this week. So yeah.
Yeah,
but I think you're right. I think for Bryce Mitchell, it's funny because you go in there and you get absolutely pummeled by Ilia Topuria, and it's kind of like his stock fell a little bit. And people were saying, he's not all he's been made out to be and everything else. And I think to come through the adversity that he did and to go in straight away with a banger like Dan Ige and then to come out and do what he did, I thought Bryce Mitchell won it. I thought it was a close fight, but I think it propels Bryce Mitchell. But I don't think there's any harm in Dan Ige's stock here. I think Ige put on a good account of himself, proved why he's in those rankings, and I don't see it as a step back for Dan Ige. I see it more as a step forward for Bryce Mitchell, this one. It'd be interesting to see what they do with him next.
It reminds me very much of the bantamweight division, Rob Font. Reminds me of Rob Font. The two, Rob Font and Dan Ige, they kind of crisscross for me a little bit. They're kind of almost one and the same. But I think absolutely, I mean, I totally think that Dan Ige deserves another crack. Top 15 at least, definitely not fighting on ranked guys. And then Bryce to move forward. So back to your favorite topic, scoring criteria, rounds.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, mate. I mean, I'm expecting a bit of shit for this, but we spoke last week just regarding scoring and how a 10-8 round could be scored for certain criteria. Doesn't have to be a completely dominant round. It just has to have a moment in there that really diminishes the other fighter, whether that's effective grappling or striking. It comes down to damage, but when we talk about damage, it's not just from striking damage. We're talking about wear and tear on the body from, submission attempts or whatever it could be. You look at the Brian Ortega-Volkanovski fight, for example, not that particular round as such, because I know Volkanovski swung that back round, but you look at that choke that Ortega had on Volkanovski, that could have had the rest of the round been relatively even, that could have been considered a 10-8 round for Brian Ortega because he was in that kind of position. So we are going to move on to, obviously, Michelle Waterson Gomez, as she is now, and Marina Rodriguez. And I mean, the reason we're talking about the scoring here is you're absolutely right. For me, round 1, 10-7. 10-7 all day. And you probably saw me looking down and thought, he's not paying attention to me, this fucker, when you were talking a minute ago. But I was just bringing up the definition of a 10-7 round. And
okay, we're going into the 10-7. We had a 10-8 definition.
We're going in
last
again.
Week. Now we're going 10-7. Let's go.
Well, it's funny because you got all three judges scored it 10-8 to Rodriguez, which, you know, I don't really have any issues with. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying anything like that. All I'm saying is this. A 10-7 round in MMA is when a fighter completely overwhelms their opponent in effective striking and or grappling, and a stoppage is warranted. Now, if that isn't the definition of this fight, what is? It's as close to a 10-7 as you're ever going to see, because Rodriguez absolutely battered Michelle Waterson Gomez. She absolutely leathered her for the 5 minutes. There was probably the first minute or so where Michelle was looking quite good. She was in and out, and she was, you know, there was a bit of grappling and a bit of, but she wasn't doing any harm. Rodriguez was absolutely textbook reading it, waiting for a moment, and then when she exploded, there was elbows, there was knees, there was right hands, left hands, kicks coming in. She was just absolutely lighting her up. And as we came to what we've spoken about this already off camera, but you know, as we were coming towards the end of that round, I was hoping the referee was going to jump in and stop the fight, because she was getting absolutely leathered. I mean, we were talking about a 5-minute period there where she got absolutely butchered. She was cut to pieces. And, you know, I've seen a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to take it away from her, because the heart on Michelle is unbelievable. You know, to stick in there and to sort of smile through it and say, it's all right, I'm good. My issue is that was after the referee jumped in, bizarrely, with 26 seconds left of the fight. I mean, it's the same thing there. You let that fight go another 26 seconds, I think it gets stopped. I think just giving that brief pause, it gave Michelle just that little bit of time. There was a couple of minutes to go. I'm all right, come on, let's go. I've only got 26 seconds to get through, and then we've got a minute before we jump into round 2. So, yeah, for me, that was a 10-7 all day long. Not even close to being a 10-8 for me, because the referee should, in my opinion, have jumped in and stopped that fight with maybe 40, 50 seconds to go. She was cooked, she was done. And even when she came out for the second round, it was a matter of time. You know, Marina Rodriguez was absolute fire. She was just... got violence on the brain, came out to inflict some serious damage, and that's exactly what she did.
Yeah, I think you can't put it more succinctly than that. I mean, I think she just she destroyed her. Apart from that first minute, it was an absolute. It wasn't good. If you're Michelle Waterson, it's not good. And I mean, I think, and you hear the guys in commentary saying, "Oh, she's an atomweight, she's small, blah blah blah." No, I just don't buy into that. When that level is so obvious, then you stop that fight. You stop that fight. Michelle Waterson's been making that weight for years. You know, she's fought people like Rose Namajunas. You know, she's really fought up that division. Carla Esparza. She's fought everybody in that division. And it's always been obvious that she's a bit smaller, but when you're that clearly out-skilled, the only thing that saved Michelle Rodriguez in that was that she interrupted the barrage from Marina Rodriguez with a throwing Hail Mary punch. And I think that's what stopped the referee going in there, because she showed that she was at least trying. She was at least trying.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. Yeah. I think the referee's got to jump in there with 40 seconds to go, because she's just getting absolutely battered. Absolutely.
I think the problem is that, you know, Michelle starts throwing back and the referee goes, okay, she's still in it.
Yeah,
she's
exactly.
a fighter. What a fighter's going to do? The fighters are going to throw. They're going to try and fight back. It's a livelihood. It's everything they do. They put in all this time in camp and everything else to, you know, have this fight and have this moment. They're not just going to lay down. That's not what they do. That's not why they do this sport. They're fighters. They're going to fight until they're out cold. But it doesn't mean that that's what should happen. That was so one-sided and so dominant. And Michelle is a bit small. She's an atomweight, isn't she? Officially, if you like.
Yeah.
But obviously the UFC don't have that division. So she's forced to fight at the way she's fighting at. And she is small. She is undermatched. But we're also looking at a Michelle Waterson who's won, one in the last 6?
Yeah.
Something like that. You know, now it's not great. And you're throwing her in there with Marina Rodriguez, who, yes, she absolutely has had a couple of losses along the way, and she has fallen a little bit short. But we're also talking about an absolute killer on a day. And that was a statement from Marina Rodriguez. That was
massive.
Everybody listen up. I'm back. I know what I need to do. I know who I am. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to fuck everybody up that crosses me. Yeah. And she was absolute lightning in a bottle. Honestly, she blew my mind. She got performance of the night, or half of it anyway. she got one hot. She received the performance of the night, but she wasn't on her own. But she was just unbelievable, mate. I mean, she to even jump on the mic afterwards and call out Tatiana Suarez as well. I mean, be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish
That's
for.
all I will say, because that is a tough fight for anybody in this division. But it goes to show the confidence that Marina's now got, where she says, I've just gone in there and I've absolutely smashed her to bits. I've shown I'm levels above. I only want the top contenders, and a fight with her and Tatiana Suarez. I mean, sign me the fuck up for that.
Yeah, it's a nice fight, and it's smart considering that she's already lost to Vina Jandiroba and Amanda Lemos, who are the other ones kind of above her. She's beaten Mackenzie Dern. She's beaten Yan Xiaonan. Right, she's beaten Yan Xiaonan, who is number 2, number 1, and getting the next title fight. So really, really smart call out. I like that she's used the mic time after that absolute hammering that she gave Michelle. I think Michelle needs to be on her bike. I think that's enough now. You can't take a beating like that and then still expect to be in there, unless your name's BJ Penn, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head then perfectly. I think it's she is too small. She's not a spring chicken. And what are you fighting for if you're not ever going to reach that level of competition? Like, what do we do? Just give her easier fights? I mean, don't get me wrong, fighters earn it. It's not for me to say they should be fighting elsewhere or whatever. But the fact is, if you put Michelle Watson Gomez in against any fringe contenders, she's going to get beat, unfortunately. And I love Michelle. I think she's amazing, but she's just outsized and outmatched. And, like you said, it wasn't skill. It wasn't just size. It was skill for skill. Marina Rodriguez was just dominant in there. And, the size difference, when she landed, Michelle was hurt. And whenever Michelle landed, Marina just kept walking forward like she just brushed it off like nothing. But, I mean, it's funny because you have these little Apex cards and they have these, and you think, it's just a shame, because can you imagine that first round there in front of a crowd full of people? I mean, it gives that extra 10% to Marina Rodriguez, and it's just being in there for Michelle taking an absolute hiding like that behind closed doors, in essence. It's just rough.
Imagine that with an extra 10%.
Yeah.
Turns into a slasher film.
It's just absolutely. Yeah. But then, moving on to the next fight of the night, we had Brian Battle and AJ Fletcher. And, there's not a massive amount to talk about here. I thought Brian Battle in the first round looked really off. I thought he looked really slow and sluggish and almost like he was, I don't know, just not really there. Whether he'd not taken it seriously or he just couldn't flick that switch. He just seemed to be just away from it. And, AJ Fletcher won that first round quite comfortably for me. I thought he was not dominant, I wouldn't say, but he definitely won the first round comfortably. But it just goes to show that level Brian Battle's on, just to flick that switch. And it goes from not even being in the fight in the first 5 minutes to then getting the submission in the second round, finishing it off. It just shows how quickly you can do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a bit of a data download, that first round. The way he came out in the second, I wonder if he was just kind of feeling him out, because he didn't really look panicked at any point. I think he was just, I'm just gonna feel him out a little bit, not give him too much, not show him too many looks, and then 100 miles an hour in a second.
Yeah, I think my problem with that is you don't download data for 5 minutes in a 3-round fight.
Yeah.
If you're in a 5-round fight, fair enough. But if you're giving 1 of 3 rounds away just to download some data, I mean, you're saying I've got to win the next 2 rounds to win this fight.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a bit of a. I think if you're downloading data, you do it in the first couple of minutes of the first round, maybe. Yeah. But then you've got to flick into gear, and he just didn't. He went back to his corner at the end of that, that first round, and it was just literally like they went, "There you go, go do you," and he just came out. Yeah, just came out a completely different fighter. But yeah, it's impressive. I mean, I'd like to see what's next. I think his problem is if he's going to slow start like that, and that's going to become a thing, as the level of competition steps up, he's going to find that a bit of an issue. So maybe you're right. Maybe he was just completely comfortable in there. But yeah, it wasn't a good look for me, because you're kind of looking at him thinking, "What are you doing, Brian?" It's time to go, or you're gonna get found out here. But like I said, he made it look so easy in the second round. he's obviously a level above, and yeah, it'd be interesting again to see what comes next for him. And as we carry on down the card, mate, the next fight was Charles Jourdain, Air Jourdain. I think he was the other winner of performance of the night, and rightly so. I mean, he was in there with Ricardo Ramos and black belt in jiu-jitsu, a serious guy, knows his stuff. And Charles Jourdain was just phenomenal, mate. And it makes me, I like him. I like what he says. I like what he's about. I think he's obviously had his licks and he's fallen short on a few occasions. I mean, we obviously saw him in there with Nathaniel Wood, and Nathaniel was, the better man there, and it shows a level that these guys are on. But I thought, Jourdain was super impressive. Looked comfortable wherever the fight was. Looked like he's improving every time I see him out there. So, win, lose or draw, he does seem to be getting better every time. So I was pleased for him to get that performance.
Yeah, he's been on my radar since the Lando Venata fight, because I really like Lando Venata, and at the time Lando was doing pretty well. And he just came in there, round one, couple of minutes, guillotine, job done. The Nathaniel fight was incredibly close. I think that was possibly one of the fight of the nights of that.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was the fight of the night. Yeah,
that was.
I don't think they won it actually, but it was definitely.
It was up there.
It's definitely one of the fight of the nights.
I remember they knocked each other down. I think in both rounds, I think it just took turns of knocking each other down. Real. He's got a real.
I think
a lot of potential. I like him a lot, and I think Canada needs.
I think I remember Nathaniel Wood complaining on Twitter actually after the fight because he never got the 50K, because I think he was certain that was going to be a fight of the night, and I think he was a bit pissed that he never got there. But I mean, just a cracking fight and a cracking performance for Charles. So yeah, happy for him, and again, just looking forward to see the match him up with next, because it's time to start moving him upwards again.
Yeah, definitely. Just before we shoot to a quick break, I want to shout out also from the weekend, the Muay Thai One Championship, Rod Tang versus Superlek. You haven't seen it, so I'm not going to put in any spoilers. It's on YouTube for free. So if you've got 20 minutes, the walkouts actually take longer than the fight, because they do all the traditional stuff. It's really cool. But that is a hell of a fight. My word, that is the fight of the weekend for me. Really, really incredible fight.
I mean, you couldn't miss it, could you?
No, it was everywhere.
Social media was absolutely blowing up. Yeah, couldn't miss it. So unless you were trying to miss it intentionally, but yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah, really. From what everything I've heard, it's one of those that you absolutely have to see. So if you haven't seen it, like me, tune in like I'm going to do probably tomorrow and just watch it. It's only 3 minutes, right?
Yeah. So 3 minutes, three rounds.
3 minute, 3 rounds. So it's not going to take too long. Jump on board and get that watched.
Right, stay with us. We're coming back and we're going to do a preview for this weekend, which is not a UFC preview, funnily enough. So we'll be back shortly.
In Combat Sports UK.
So welcome back, everybody, to Combat Sports UK MMA podcast. And we're going to just wrap up the weekend's action and then kind of jump into what's happening this weekend. So next on the bill was Tim Means and Andre Fiallo. Fight of the night. I totally agree. What do you think?
Yeah, was fight. Yeah, absolutely. Nailed on. Both guys gave it everything. The Dirty Bird was phenomenal. He looked so sharp, looked so slick, just rolled back the years and put an absolute beating on Fiallo, who was as game as anything and kept throwing back. So, yeah, that was fully deserving. Just wanted to give that a little bit of a shout on the podcast here because, yeah, phenomenal fight. Absolutely warranted that bonus. So pleased for both guys, if you like, that they ended up getting that, especially on a card that had Fiziev and Gamrot as the main event. I think they would never have expected to be walking away with that bonus. So fair play to both men. Absolutely cracking fight.
Yeah, and Andre Fiallo is always in a war. He's always in a war. Like every single time his fights are entertaining, and Tim Means always brings it. I just loved, again, talking about combinations again, what really excited me from that fight with Means' combinations. How, you don't often see people working the knees in sequence. Right, you saw Grasso the other weekend just doing them, one after the other. You never see it was knees, then up top, then body. Oh, it was really, really cool. Really, really great to watch. Great to watch.
Smooth transitions everywhere, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really
no, absolutely devastating performance. And then the last one from that card, just to touch on, was the Cody Brundage and Jacob Malkoun fight. I mean, not going to spend too much time talking about this one because there wasn't too much of a fight, but there was a big talking point on it. Obviously, Jacob Malkoun, the fight starts out, the first minute of the first round is really competitive. You know, they're both scrambling left, right, and centre. It's looking like it's shaping up probably to be a good fight. Jacob Malkoun then gets into a dominant position and starts taking over that first round. And then for some reason, he thought, I'm just going to elbow this kid in the back of the head and get disqualified. I mean, what a fucking numpty. I was just watching it and I'm thinking, you've got Brundage's back. You're in a completely dominating position. This round is yours. You've secured it. You don't have to push for anything. If something pops itself up, yes, but like I can understand, you know, like the Petr Yan against Aljo with the knee and things like that. I can kind of understand them because they heat of the moment and it was like a reaction shot more than anything. But he was in complete control, but obviously not in control of his emotions. Because I mean, fair play to the referee for calling it when he saw it, because you know it was a clear shot to the back of the head. It was a clear illegal blow, and the DQ was absolutely right.
Yeah, totally right. I can't get my head around that because it's not even like there was one. I think it was Yuri Prohashka versus, I want to say somebody, maybe Dom Reyes, or was it? No, it was Pereira. I think it might have been Pereira actually, where Pereira elbows someone, and it looks to catch them on the back of the head, but they're actually kind of looking towards the side, and it kind of like skims the back of the head. So you can say, okay, that's questionable. Right, and you can see what the fighter's trying to do. In this instance, it's exactly like you said. He's in a dominant position. He's on top of the fella. And he's just going, yeah, you know what? I'll just knock him on the back of the head, see if I get away with it. And then it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to me. And I think
just no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. But yeah,
great work.
Right decision. I mean, I've seen people giving a lot of shit to Cody Brundage on social media as well. And you got to remember these guys are fighting.
Yeah.
They fight for the money.
Yeah.
They get a win bonus if they win the fight. He was getting pummeled in that first round to the back of the head, and he thought, take my money, easy night. You know, he gets his hand raised there. You can't hate on Brundage for it. You can only look at Malkoun and say, you absolute div.
Yeah, so exactly.
And I mean, that was it. That wrapped up.
I challenge those people that are digging at him on social media to take an elbow to the back of the head from a mountain
position. Take a full force elbow.
From a dude that weighs 185 pounds. What's that in kilos? It's got to be above 80 kilos, right? Something like that. Take one of those.
It's enough.
See if you're still complaining Cody Brundage on the back end of it. Not a chance.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
Yeah. No, but that finishes off the UFC from the weekend, really. Nothing too much else to talk about on that card for me. But there was other action as well at the weekend. So we'll quickly just touch on the Bellator, which, you know, is not something I thought I'd be saying. But, you know, the main event in particular, devastated for Fabian Edwards. Thought he put on a hell of an account of himself. I actually had him winning the first 2 rounds, if I'm completely honest. Yep. I've been back and watched it, and I thought he was setting Eblen up with everything. You know, he was reading everything. He was defending the takedowns. He was lightning on the feet. He was landing heavy, and he just looked almost in control to a certain extent. It looked like the game plan was playing out perfectly, and then Johnny Eblen showed why everyone's talking about him as being such a hot prospect, because he landed the big shot, followed it up, and just absolutely superb. But you know, probably overshadowed his performance in the octagon fighting.
Yeah.
To then having beef with Rocky himself. I mean, Leon was in there. The two were shouting and mouthing at each other, and all I'll say is this. Johnny Eblen, we love you. Careful what you wish for, my friend.
Yeah. Big time. It's big time, especially with the rumours about what's happening with I'm going to say PFL then. Obviously, we're going into the PFL, but with Bellator, with them possibly going bankrupt and whatever. If he ends up in the UFC, I tell you what, like, oof, there's a challenge.
He's a great addition. I'd absolutely love to see him switch over. I don't want to see him. I mean, I know Bellator, we don't know necessarily what's going off with them and what the plan is moving forward for the athletes, at least. But yeah, I think he's definitely one that needs to cross over. You know, if the UFC can get him over there, then he needs to be in there showing where he stands amongst those boys there, because there's some cracking competition there for him. And I don't think he'd be out of his depth. You know, obviously, when you say that about Johnny Eblen, he was the one that got the stoppage, but I think you give the performance itself, the whole fight, I think it shows that Fabian Edwards belongs as well.
Yeah, I would
okay,
agree,
he got caught, but besides getting caught, he was putting on a hell of a performance. So, skill Edwards is right up there as well, and looking forward to the bounce back for him. But so we've done UFC.
We've done the UFC. We've done the UFC. We've done Bellator. Now we're going to jump into BFL. BFL.
Yeah, BFL.
For this weekend. I'll start us off with that. I think I remember watching Cedric Doumbé in his last Glory fight a couple of years ago, Glory 77, I think it was. And I just remember looking at this kid thinking, there's strikers and then there's strikers. Like this guy, so fast, his hands are so good, and he carries ridiculous power for somebody who doesn't really look like he does. And he was actually fighting.
Yeah.
I remember that fight. He was fighting on the back foot. His opponent was putting pressure on him, and he was just picking him off bit by bit, and then just landed some bombs that absolutely finished him off. And that was his last fight in Glory. He's since transitioned to MMA. He's 4-0 at the moment. What are your impressions of him? Have you seen him before in Glory, or where is he on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched bits of him. I've watched bits from when he was in Glory, and you're right, he looks an absolute phenomenal talent. And if he can string it all together and pick up those bits that maybe he's not as experienced in, he's a hell of a talent. And again, I mean, I love the PFL, but I'm kind of disappointed that he hasn't signed to the UFC, if I'm honest. I know there was a lot of rumblings from people saying they really wanted to see that because this kid's got it all. But I think the PFL is going from strength to strength. I think there's going to be a much higher competition as time goes on, because I think the PFL are going to continue to keep signing, top talent. I think they're not necessarily going to rival the UFC as such, but they're absolutely probably staking the claim as being up there as one of the, the second biggest promotion, if you like, for me at the moment, at least. So yeah, just love what the PFL are doing. I'm looking forward to seeing that fight. And see what the kid's all about, because the PFL aren't going to take the time with him. He's straight into a main event, and it's time for Cedric Doumbé to show what he's all about. Well, there's some nice bits of action on the card, mate, as well. I mean, just looking for the next fight down there, we've got the Laser King has obviously moved over as well, so he's going to be fighting in the co-main event. You've got our own Dakota Dechiva in the semi-final of the PFL playoffs. I mean, have you seen much of Dakota?
I have, yeah. I've seen her last couple of fights. Super exciting, and I think they had her on commentary. I want to say for one of the more recent PFL cards. She's super intelligent as well, man. She's got a really good eye for fighting. She can break it down really well. She's exciting. She's very exciting.
She's an absolute. Honest to God, I'm really excited about Dakota. I think she's going to walk this tournament. I'll be completely honest, and that's no disrespect to the other ladies in there. I just think Dakota Dechiva is absolutely the real deal. I think she's really going to announce herself. I expect her to go over to Paris and do it in absolute killer fashion, like she always does, and roll on and then take that winner's spot. In the final, I'm excited to see that one. But she's not the only British female that we've got on the PFL card either. We have also got the one and only Chanel the Nightmare Dyer making a debut for the PFL. And if anybody's not aware of Chanel, we did a quick interview with her. It's over on our YouTube page. Go and check it out on the Combat Sports UK YouTube. But I'm excited for this. I've seen Chanel Dyer fight, and she's so explosive. I mean, she's just, the way she fights is just so intelligent, but it's also there for entertainment value. She's one of those fighters that will maybe put herself in positions that aren't the best to do something exciting for the fans. She's all about the entertainment. She's going to go in there. She's going to look for a knockout. She's going to look for it early, and she's going to keep pushing until she gets it. And, she's been in some wars. She's picked up, but she's got an amateur pedigree that's almost unmatched. Which is why she's one of the hottest prospects coming out of the UK at the moment. So really, really excited to see Chanel make her debut, and she's absolutely going to smash it. Can't wait to see her go out there, pick up her first knockout win nice and early, inside the first minute or two. I've absolutely no doubts, but she's looking for a McDonald's sponsorship, so it's time. McDonald's, jump on board. Don't miss this train. Go to get it early.
Get her. I mean, she's got looking at her record now, she's got a spinning back fist, round one knockout, and then a win by standing TKO in round one as well. So she's 2-0 as a pro, and then like you said, she's got a pretty stellar amateur career. Picked up a couple of losses on there as well, which are always, pretty interesting to see, because those are what we learn from.
There's some on there as well. I mean, she's her style's very Muay Thai based, but she's obviously rounded out the rest of that skill set. She's training down at a GB top team with Brad Pickett, so obviously the wrestling is, developing massively down there, the grappling side of it. So she credits some of the improvements lately to working with that team and her teammates down there who she's working every day with. But yeah, she's an exciting talent, and she's got a great story how she got into the sport, and some of the knocks she's taken along the way as well already. But this is the start. It's the start of that. I mean, if you look through her record or you watch some of her fights, she's been in there with Shauna Bannon, she's been in there with Sammy Jo Luxton. She's been in with some good level competition already. And when she took those fights, with all due respect, she wasn't a shade on the fight as she is now. So honestly, she's a real hot talent, and she's coming for everything. She's one of those. I spoke to her, mate, and I'll be honest, when I left the conversation, I just thought, this feels like, and it might be a big shout, this, but when people were interviewing Conor McGregor back in the day, he was just a nobody. It was kind of just that nobody, no one really knew who he was, but he spoke with so much confidence in who he was and what he was going to go on to do. Chanel's got that. She gave me that feeling of, this is something special. So I'm really looking forward to the debut. So that's the main picks out of the PFL card for me. She'll be Paris, because there's no fights in America. No fights in America this weekend because it's Canelo fight week. So jump onto the MMA pod. Onto the boxing pod, and we'll be picking up on that. Picking the bones.
Yeah, it might be some positive news for once.
Yeah, there will. There'll be a little bit in there, mate. Yeah, it'll be mostly positive this week, but it's boxing, so there's always something bad to talk about.
No, she's super exciting. If you haven't checked out the interview, go ahead and check that out. Check out some of her highlights. She's really up and coming. A couple of things I want to direct people's attention to. Obviously, with there being no UFC, there is also Cage Warriors. I think it's airing at the same time, maybe later than the PFL. But there's a couple of British lads on there. Nathan Fletcher in the co-main event. He's one to look out for. Lots of finishes on his record. Lots of variation in finishes as well. And also Luke Riley. He's another one to look out for. He's fighting a bit further down on the main card. He might be the first fight on the main card. Also very exciting. He's had a couple of rough decisions, unanimous decisions. But before that, he was punching people into the next generation. So those are two to check out. And then just my final plug goes over to One Championship. They have a very interesting kind of 5-fight main card, but 3 of the top fights all involve females. There's a Muay Thai fight in there, an MMA, and a grappling, so submission grappling involving Danielle Kelly. If you don't follow her on social media, she's a great follow, and she's an absolute phenom in jiu-jitsu. Like, if you do like your jiu-jitsu, go and check out her fight. I believe it'll be on YouTube, One Championship's YouTube channel for people like us in the UK and Europe, as it tends to be. She's really exciting. Go watch that fight. You think Mikey Musumeci for the dudes, think Danielle Kelly for the ladies. She's really exciting. She'll be a super fun fight. John Lineker's fighting on that card as well. Hands of Stone. He's still kicking around. So there's lots to go and watch outside of the UFC. Obviously, Cage Warriors Manchester, as we referenced, PFL Paris, and One Championship. So plenty to watch. And that PFL Paris
plenty
card,
to
I'm
get your
really
teeth
excited
into.
for that. Yeah, I'm really excited for that. I looked into going down to it, but the cost to get there from where I am is about €500 just for a night. So I was like, nah.
It's not a nip down the road for you, is it?
No, it ain't. No. It should be. I'm in Europe for crying out loud. But go on.
Yeah, that's it. I was just going to say, well, speaking of excitement and things that we can stick our teeth into, we had, the UFC and Dana White were absolutely on fire in this last 7 days or so. I mean, some of the fight announcements, they were just coming in thick and fast. Every time you refresh your Twitter feed or whatever else, you were going, fucking hell, there's another one there.
No, it was ridiculous.
Banger.
It was ridiculous.
And it's just been banger after banger after banger after banger. I mean, we're closing this year out on absolute fire.
Yeah. I mean, has an end of the year ever looked
Which one
like
do you want
this?
to talk about first? Which one do you want to go to first, mate? Because there's a full list.
I mean, I think we'll jump in with probably the biggest one from a British perspective, and that's got to be Leon Edwards, Colby Covington, on December 16th. I want to say UFC 296. I mean, that's been in the making since March, since Leon defended the belt against Kamaru. It's been a while in the making, but that for me is, do you buy into this, right? Do you buy into this whole Colby is just the worst version of Leon, of Kamaru chat? Where do you sit with Colby Covington?
No, I don't buy into that. Look, I know obviously Kamaru got the stoppage, didn't he, in the second fight with Colby? The second fight? I think it was
Kamaru got the stoppage
fight,
in the first one. I think he broke his jaw. In the first one, he got the stoppage. The second one went 5 rounds, and it was a war. They were both war.
But both fights were incredibly close. And the difference for me is, yes, okay, Kamaru carried the power. I mean, we saw what he did to Masvidal, for example. And Colby doesn't have that knockout power. But I would actually say that Colby's a far better striker. Maybe the wrestling is not quite as dominant as Kamaru's, but he's definitely got that energy for that for a 5-round wrestling match. I don't buy into the premise that he's just a version of Kamaru Usman, but a weaker version of Kamaru Usman. I don't buy into that at all. I think they are very similar styles, but very different fighters, very different mentalities, very different approaches with how they go about the fight. As for how the fight goes, I'm going to go out on a limb here nice and early.
It's not like you. It's not like you.
Well, do you know what? Believe it or not, I actually love Colby. I think he's great. I think he's fantastic entertainment. I think he's clearly just playing a role. It's just a shtick. It's nothing serious. There's nothing genuine there. Anyone who ever says they've spoken to Colby says what a great guy he is in private. He just knows, he gets the game. He knows what he has to do. Is it cringe? Yes, it is. Is it funny at the same time? Oh, fuck it, absolutely right. It is. He's absolutely on the nail with everything. I think Leon Edwards smashes Colby Covington to bits.
Smashes to bits. Michelle Waterson style.
Yep. Not far off. Honestly, I think Leon is that good. And I think his level of wrestling, people talk about the wrestling. Leon's not going to struggle with the wrestling. Anyone who talks about Leon Edwards says about how good he is everywhere, how well-rounded he is everywhere. Leon can wrestle. He just chooses to strike because predominantly he's a striker. But we saw it in the Kamaru Usman rematch. He's more than capable on the ground. We saw it in the first fight even. Although, that first round of that first fight, that was Leon's round. And then it all went downhill from there until he turned it round. But Leon can switch your lights out like that. And I think someone like Colby getting into his head all week and talking shit to him all week, Leon, I think, when somebody becomes that champion, they get that extra... What is it? It's the Teddy Atlas saying, isn't it? An extra 10%. Yeah. And it's true. I'm not sure about the actual percentage, but there's definitely an air of, I'm the champ. I always thought I could do it, but now I know that I can do it. And I think Leon switched Kamaru's lights out. I don't think Colby takes a shot like Kamaru. And I think it's a matter of time. I can see Colby shooting, and I can see Leon landing maybe even another head kick. I'll be honest. I think Leon can switch Colby out at any time he wants. I really do. I think
that would be unreal.
I love Colby. I actually think his fight style is quite entertaining because he's got good hands and he likes to trade. All right, we've seen him wrestle quite a lot, but that he won't be able to do that against Leon. It will end up being a bit of a standing match, and I think Leon's going to switch him out.
Yeah, I think. Look, I absolutely pray for the same outcome. I mean, I was there in London. I felt what it's like to be around the Leon Edwards fight week. I've been a fan of his for a while as well, watching him through this streak, watching what he went through in COVID, just how he stayed so calm. He never, ever kind of gave in. He took the Chimaev fight when nobody else wanted it. Yeah, it didn't work out. There is something special about Leon Edwards. There is something special about him. It's not necessarily his personality, it's his fighting style and his resilience and the story. I remember BT Sport did an incredible 15-20 minute piece on him before the first Kamaru fight, and he talked about his upbringing in Jamaica, the gangland culture, and everything like that. I think Colby Covington's going to throw at him. It's gonna phase him when you've been through that in your life.
No.
So from that perspective, yeah, I'm absolutely, Leon all the way for me. I agree with you. I do think he's gonna come out with the win. I think it's gonna be a rocky time of it. I think he's gonna go down the first 2 rounds. To be honest, I think Colby will come out fast. I think he'll come out quick. I think he'll test the cage wrestling of Leon, and I think that will hold him up in those first 2 rounds.
Yes.
And it will be one of those. Colby gets those 2 rounds because he nullified Leon a little bit. But then I think Leon will just kind of come into his own a little bit. I think he'll work out the strength. And I think he'll work out what he needs to do and how to get around Colby. I don't think Colby does anything special. I honestly, until the second Usman fight, I didn't think his striking was particularly good. I thought he flattered to deceive quite a lot with his striking in terms of he throws a lot out there. I remember there was that one fight where he threw over 500 or something like that. But a lot of it's just kind of pillow punches. Granted, I've not been punched in the face.
Yeah, I think the problem with Colby's, he doesn't sit down on his shots, does he? The shots are there to set something else up. That's
exactly.
When he throws those punches, he's not stepping into them. He's not putting anything behind them, and that's what I think the difference will be. I think Leon will be quite happy taking those little shots to land that big shot. And I mean, you've got more confidence in Colby. I think this is going to be an absolute mass. Honestly, I see this being, if he doesn't get him out of there, it'll be an absolute domination from start to finish. Trust me, Leon's going to absolutely smash Colby to bits, and I love Colby. He's pure entertainment. But let's
mark your calendars. 26th of September, we're recording. Nathan Shields calls it.
Yeah,
calls it a wash for Leon Edwards.
Yeah.
Says he's going to do it.
Leon's going to smash Colby to absolute pieces.
You heard it here first. Clip that. Put that everywhere.
That wasn't the only fight announcement. That wasn't the only one, though, was it, mate? British and Irish interest, let's say.
Let's go, Paddy the Baddie. Paddy the Baddie.
Who do you want to go to?
Paddy the Baddie. We've got to go Paddy the Baddie next. Yeah. What we saying about Paddy Pimlet?
This fight's obviously got quite a lot of hate, and I think that's just out of adoration for Tony Ferguson. I think people respect what he's done in the game, who he used to be, let's say. And I think everyone understands now that Tony Ferguson is, not that guy. He's not that guy anymore. That time was there, and now it's gone. But I actually think it's a great fight, a really good fight. And the reason I say that is because Paddy has shown, especially the UK fans in these Cage Warrior days, what he can do.
Yeah.
But we've also seen him step into the UFC, and he's not been fighting the best talent out there. Let's be honest. With all due respect to the guys that he's fought, we're not talking any top names, any big names. But I think this is a tricky one because I like it from both sides, because for Tony, it's still a big name that's nowhere near the kind of killer that he's been fighting. And I think that's fair to say. It's nothing against Paddy. It's just the reality of the rankings and the positions everyone's in. For Paddy, it's a chance to get a huge scalp on his record. And if he loses to Tony Ferguson, it don't look bad on a record either. To say that you came into the UFC and you lost to Tony Ferguson, despite what we all know, what stage we know Tony's at. So it's kind of a no-lose fight, I think, for Paddy. I think if he loses to Tony Ferguson, people say, "Oh, Tony's back," and they'll slate Paddy one way or the other. But I think it's a good fight for him, because I think Tony's, his heart's there, his head's there. I just don't think the body's in it anymore. I think Tony really wants it, and that's what's sad to see when fighters get to this stage. I just think he's taken too much damage. I think that Gaethje fight changed him, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah.
I think the beatdown Justin Gaethje put on him, he's just never been the same. He had glimpses in the Michael Chandler fight, and then Chandler kicked his head off, and that's turned him into a meme of a chicken nugget. And it's just it's stuff like that is hard to come back from just one of those. And Tony's had a few now. From the run he was on to then this, I fear for him, I'll be honest, because I think losing to the type of competition he's lost to so far, with all due respect to Paddy's a level below that right now. And if he loses to Paddy, he's kind of, I think it's fair to say that Tony Ferguson's kind of no more. It's just it's a tricky one. It's difficult. I like the matchup for Paddy. I'll be honest. I actually think it's a fairly competitive knock, but Paddy can whack, and he's fit, he's fresh, he's strong. He's quite big for the weight. So, and he looks over, his social media and stuff like he's not blown up despite all this time off with the injury. He looks like he's kept, in relatively decent shape, and that can only be good for him. Maybe the Jared Gordon fight was a wake up for Paddy, and he's had a lot of shit since then. And I expect Paddy to come back and make a real statement. Is he at the level he thinks he's at? Probably not yet. But I think he's determined to get there. And I think, the hate that he got for the response to the Jared Gordon fight will just light a fire under Paddy. And if he wasn't switched on already, he definitely is now. Yeah,
I mean, it's almost as if we planned this, right? We're going opposites in both fights so far. This fight, I apologize to my friend Vince. Vince, if you're listening, please turn off right now. You're not going to like this. There's no way on God's green earth that Paddy should lose to Tony Ferguson. This Tony Ferguson, there is no way. There's absolutely no way. I mean,
no.
Tony is as close to this dude should retire as you could probably possibly be. I referenced BJ Penn earlier. When you watch that, was it the Yair Rodriguez fight where he just got, he just wasn't there. Tony's not there at all. I completely agree with you with the Gaethje fight. I think if Paddy loses this fight, it's then a very, very difficult argument as to where you put him next. I mean, to lose to this version of Tony Ferguson, do I think Bobby Green, who was Ferguson's last fight out, if I'm not mistaken, is Bobby Green upper echelon? No, I don't think so. No. I think he does what he does well. But Rafael Fizievs proved, an early Rafael Fizievs proved pretty much that there's people better than him at what he does. Bobby Green's a very entertaining fighter, and he's been in the game a long time, but he's not at that level that even Tony a few years ago was dealing with pretty handsomely on his big win streak. So no, for me it is, you beat Tony Ferguson, it's great for your brand, great for your standing in the UFC. But you lose to Tony Ferguson at this point, if you're a Paddy Pimblett, it's not good. It's not good. I mean, Bobby Green subbed him. Bobby Green subbed Tony Ferguson, and that is not necessarily what Bobby Green does. So for me, it just doesn't end pretty. I think it's a bit of a throw him to the wolves type situation. We need a name to build Paddy off. And Ferguson's not at that stage where he is kind of like a Dan Ige, for example, right? He's a bit of a name. He's highly ranked in the division, and he's competitive in the division. Tony Ferguson hasn't been competitive in this division.
I think that's
for a while.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, with all due respect to Bobby Green was a step down from your Michael Chandlers, your Justin Gaethjes, your Charles Oliveira's. I mean, that was different. I think for Paddy, it's a good matchup because the reality is Paddy needed to move on and needed to start moving up the ranks because of the timeout. I don't think he wanted to waste any more time, but I think if you chuck him in there with a Matt Favola, a Drew Dober, somebody around that sort of, even a Bobby Green, somebody around that neck of the woods. I don't. With all due respect, I'm not sure I'd be betting with Paddy on those totally at this stage. I feel like he's still in development. I think the problem is he beats Tony Ferguson. He might jump those guys there, and then he's looking at even bigger fights, which maybe he's not ready for. So it's interesting to see. But like I said, British and Irish talent. It's a hot week for us because he's back again in quick succession. It's not doubling like we'd hoped, but Ian Gary's returning, and he's in a big fight.
Yeah. This is a real tasty one. This is a real tasty one. I mean, Gary's now got to prove himself big time. He's really got to come up and do it. Yeah, I think the difference is stylistically, some of Ian Gary's matches so far have been favoured towards him being the striker. I think there's been a little bit of that. I think this one is where it could get really mixed up because if you saw Luque against RDA last time out, I thought Luque looked great.
I'll be honest, he was a little reserved, and obviously he had the brain injury and stuff like that. And there was probably a little bit there just saying, let's not get into anything we don't need to get into here. But he's kind of ticked that box now. He's been back in there with RDA. He took some shots. He's done whatever, and he seems to come out unscathed. So really interesting matchup stylistically because Luque he was wrestling quite heavy in that RDA fight, and I think RDA was even surprised at how good Luque was there. So I think these two train together as well, don't they?
Killcliff, yeah.
So it's great to see that all those guys training in the same area, but it's not stopping them fighting each other. So it's good to see. But it's a big step for Ian Garry again. But look, the kid's full of confidence. He believes he's a second coming, let's say. And so far, he's not really done anything to make us question otherwise. So I'm just excited for another Ian Garry fight week. But I think from a stylistic point of view, it's definitely a trickier matchup than what he's had to date. So it'd be interesting to see if he can make that next step.
Yeah, big time, because I think Luque can do it all. He proved also against RDA that he can do it all. He's fallen short. I think the Bilal fight was odd. I don't really understand how and why Luque lost that fight, but I don't understand Bilal Muhammad in general. So maybe that's that.
It can be we've kind of seen Bilal do that to other people that we didn't think he'd be able to as well. He knocked out Sean Brady, which I don't think anyone saw that coming. So Bilal's obviously a much trickier opponent than the eye test seems to suggest. But we talk about tricky matchups. There was a couple more announcements. A couple I'll rattle off quickly, and we'll make one probably a talking point. We've got Pantoja will be defending the belt against Royval, which is an absolute belter of a fight. That'll be the co-main for Leon Colby.
296.
That's right. Yeah. And then we've got Shavkat Rakhmonov will be facing off against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, which is a belting fight. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to go early on this one. I fear for Wonderboy. I really do. And I love Wonderboy. I think if he can keep it at a distance and he can keep it a point scoring match, then he's got a real chance. But I think Shavkat's just so well rounded. He can trade on the feet. He can mix it up. He can wrestle. He can grapple. He's got everything. So I don't fancy Wonderboy in that one, if I'm honest. And then the last one just to touch on before. Yeah, the last one to jump on before we go is Yuri Prochazka and Alex Pereira for the vacant light heavyweight title.
Have you seen
as the striker's dream goes?
Somebody's edited together the video of Pereira in the jungle with his bow and the one of Yuri in wherever he is in the forest with his samurai. It just looks so cool. I'm so hyped for this fight. This fight for me, I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know who's going to win, how they're going to win, what's going to happen. Every other fight
it's
I kind of have a bit
dream.
of a take on, but this is just incredible. This is such a good fight. Striker's dream, just like you said.
Yeah, for me, really interesting one. I'm not going to fence it. I'm going to go early and I'll potentially change my mind further down the line. I think Potan becomes a two-weight world champion. Ooh. And I think that's probably a big shout. Because I think as far as well-rounded goes, I think Yuri kind of showed against Glover that he was, more than capable. Let's say if the fight goes to the ground, which, if he chooses to do that with Pereira, I think it only goes one way, that fight. But Pereira is a better striker. Prochazka is more of a wildly striker. You never really know what he's going to throw. But I think for a natural striker like Pereira, I think he'll see a lot of that coming. And one thing I would say about Prochazka is I think he leaves himself open to get hit with them big shots. And I think Potan, a light heavyweight, probably still... All right, we never saw it against Jan so much, but he probably still carries the power. And I think I think just because the fact that these two are just absolutely out of their goddamn minds, we'll see just a striking masterclass either way. It's a hell of a fight. It's so exciting. But yeah,
it's incredible.
I'm leaning towards Potan early doors.
He's made some early calls.
It's funny because we actually had, well, we had again, I was listening on Bisping, they had Jamal Hill on there, and he basically said he couldn't pick between them. He didn't really care who won. He was just going to come back and smash them both to bits, whoever had the belt. and then he would do the other one after that. So it's such an interesting stylistic match. I mean, it's just perfect. It's going to be wild, and there's no way it's going 5 rounds. It's not a hope in hell's chance. But yeah, I mean, crazy week for fight announcements, fights, entertainment galore everywhere. Thank you all for joining us this week. We'll be back next week. Follow us across social media, Combat Sports UK. Jump onto the YouTube channel, subscribe and like, and we'll catch you next time.
Catch you later, everybody. It seems I came back right on time. Cheers.
Just
Jason.
in time to say goodbye.